Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for the video you've all been waiting for, my 200th episode of Album of the Day, which, I'm sorry I didn't do a review last week. I was just busy sort of wrapping up my junior year of high school, and also last week I've been out of town at MDA Summer Camp, my final year of MDA Summer Camp at Camp Fairley in Chestertown, Maryland, which thanks to everyone at MDA for helping me create all those great memories while I was at camp those last few years. Anyway, let's get on to the review. So today's artist is a California-based garage rock artist that you may, if you've been watching my channel, you may remember I've done a couple of reviews of a few of his albums, and he's really one of the most prolific faces in independent rock music when it comes to garage rock, psych rock, with kind of a lo-fi feel to it. Of course, I'm talking about the prolific rocker known as Ty Segall, who's also done a bunch of different projects along with albums under his own name. And I'm here to review his latest album, which came out earlier this year on January 26th, 2018 on Drag City. And the album is called Freedom's Goblin. And as you can see, I own myself a vinyl copy of this album. And this is definitely one of my favorite records of the year. In fact, it may have to be in my top 5 of the year so far. Ty Segall lately has had some really strong output with Emotional Mugger, and then after that his brilliant self-titled record. And this one, it seems he's come out with his magnum opus almost, because it's by far his longest record to date, as well as definitely his most experimental album to date. Anyway, love this album cover. It's like all the different faces of the members of his current band, the Freedom Band, sort of copied and pasted together to make it look like a goblin. And then, of course, there's Ty's face in the left corner. So it's very clever, the idea on the album cover of Freedom's Goblin. And there's the back, which says Freedom Band, Our Freedom's Goblin. So definitely very clever, the idea here. And it did come with a poster of Ty. Very colorful and psychedelic. That's cool. And then it does have very lovely gatefold, very beautiful colors, and of course it has the lyrics, and that's a photo of Ty's dog, Fanny, which there's a tribute to Fanny on this album, which is the opening track on here, Fanny Dog. And there's the liner notes and credits. And there's 19 tracks on this album, and it's over an hour and 15 minutes, so this is definitely a very lengthy album. By far the longest album he's ever put out. So, and it's kind of like a double LP, so it's essentially his white album. Really nice sleeve. There's side A, and then there's side B. And really nice colors on the LPs as well. Side C and side D. And no download card, unfortunately, which is too bad. Like, Drag City doesn't do download cards for some reason, which too bad, because I certainly would love a more portable way to listen to this, because I love this album so much. Yeah, so that's Freedom's Goblin, the LP version. Now, not only do I say it's like his White Album in the sense of it being his longest LP to date, but also I definitely do see a little bit of influence by the Beatles here on this album, but still with Ty's own unique twists. In fact, this album is definitely his most complicated album to date. I mean, he makes simple riffs sound very complicated on this album. Album with some totally killer guitar improvs that go on for most of this album, along with the bunch of different styles, including psychedelia, folk, alternative country, prog, and stuff like that. The opening track, Fanny Dog, opens up with these very cool horn stabs that sort of lock in with the just totally rockin' backing instrumentation. It's got a little bit of a soul, almost kind of a funky sort of vibe to it, which is a little different from anything he's done before. And then, of course, it's got these very clever lyrics that are about his dog, Fanny, that sort of go really well alongside the inside. It's very cool, sort of soulful instrumental. And then after that, the next track, Rain, comes in with some somber pianos and some kind of introspective lyrics, which really do show some irony in Ty's lyrics, but also a bit of maturity for him as well. I mean, it's no Shakespeare, but it definitely is probably some of his most comprehensive that I've heard from him. And then of course the song builds with these moaning slide guitars and really cool drumming that syncopates with it really well. And the song also does contain horns, but in this case more funeral horns in this case. But following after that, I love his cover of Hot Chocolate's Everyone's a Winner here on this record. He takes this classic sort of disco track and makes it much more venomous and much more distorted and in your face. He makes it sound like just a really tough, loud garage rock dirge on here, and I'm loving the way it sounds. I mean, the incredible guitar solo at the end, the kind of swagger hand percussion. I mean, not to mention Fred Armisen does provide some additional percussion work to the song, so you know it's got to be good. And I also love Ty's falsetto, which definitely really does do the lyrics originally written by Hot Chocolate plenty of justice. And I also love the kind of soulful call and response backup vocals on the track. Satisfied. Yeah, it definitely is a great cover. And then we have The Spoiler of Cadaver, which is a song that sort of even incorporates elements of electronic and disco, as the only instruments being heard on this song are guitar, bass, a drum machine, and a little bit of hand percussion. Like I'm hearing some shakers in there in the chorus. But basically he plays all the instruments here himself and really makes the kind of sexy disco sensibilities of this track really work. I mean, it's got some super cool sort of earworming bass and guitar riffs on here that are kind of psychedelic, as they sound like they're being put through an effects pedal a little bit, which is making them sound very druggy almost, which I love. And I really like the kind of the diversity of vocal range here on this album. Like here on this track, Ty goes for this kind of demonic, almost kind of supernatural feel with his vocals here on this track. So it's got a little bit of a Bowie, yeah, it got a little bit of the Bowie effect going on. No, and I also love the hooky falsetto, the spoiler a cadaver, which is actually sung by someone else who happens to be Savannah Mashias, as yes, according to the liner notes. And then we have When Mommy Kills You, which lyrically is probably one of the closest to Emotional Mugger, his 2016 record, but still really fits in well with the set of this record. And it's got all kinds of crazy stuff going on, like wah-wah pedals along with kind of violent piano, and also it's got the use of gang vocals, which do include these kind of off-kilter la-la-las at the end. And so it's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, it really does work. Following that, the track My Lady's on Fire. On Fire may have melody similarities to the song Orange Colored Queen off his self-titled record, but definitely has a little different tempo and key change, and also a lot more introspective. And also, I have to give it to McCall Cronin for his incredible infectious saxophone here on this track. Alta is sort of a tribute to Ty's hometown, and sort of talking about he sort of misses the hometown that he used to know, and sort of says how he would put his life on the line to to save it from all the changes that it's gone through, because he remembers the perfect view just fine. So some very satisfying lyrics on here, along with definitely very satisfying production here on this track. I mean, the melody on this track is like golden, and then of course it has those incredible romantic interplay between the guitars and the Fender Rhodes piano. Excuse me. Piano. But then we have probably one of the most unusual features on the record, the song Meaning, which opens up with some kind of trance-like drums and percussion, along with some weird sort of unpolished guitar sounds that sound like something pulled straight out of the playbook of Wilco's A Ghost Is Born, but in a good way. But then all of a sudden it changes into this more furious sort of driving punk attitude, and this is the one song that actually features lead vocals from Ty Segall's wife, Danae Segall, and she really does come through with a very powerful performance here on this track. Talking about how some people sort of say that they know everything, but in reality they don't, and like they may be filled with meaning, but at the same time they definitely are filled with a bunch of trite that's hard to believe. So her she's almost screaming these lyrics into the microphone, and it just sounds incredible and really does tie this whole album together very nicely. It's like Cry 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 goes in the kind of harmony-drenched alternative country, but sounds really nice. Shoot You Up is kind of almost kind of political cool, I guess, from the lyrics, because it does sort of talk about how the people that are trying to rule us are kind of more like zombies than they are like people trying to help us. Help us. So the lyrics could be a metaphor for that, or they could also be lyrical content, kind of about how we don't feel safe and we're just in an environment of violence all the time. Violence all the time. Hence the lyrics of these children. They ain't children no more. They're the carnivores, because they're just always hungry for our souls. Souls, and I do love the kind of bluesy groove of the track. And I really like the blend of Ty's kind of monotone lead vocals along with Emma Kelly's really nice, catchy falsetto backup vocals. I mean, the riff is definitely bound to get stuck in your head instantly, along with the hook of this track. You say all the nice things. Sort of goes back to sort of the relationship story that sort of reflected on "Cry, Cry, Cry" how the woman he's referring to here like may say all the things that he wants to hear, but those whispers kind of disappear once they're in bed alone. But then adding much more depth to that sort of sentiment is the last waltz, which definitely is the closest about death, and it has kind of this boozy, and it's kind of like, and it's got kind of this boozy sort of vibe to it, and it's definitely got a waltz feel, hence the name, The Last Waltz, and basically it sees our album's character, who, could be called Freedom, like an alter ego or something like that, sort of finding out that his lover is gone and sort of wanting to die too, so he could go into heaven and see her again, but really adding but really bringing in plenty of absurdity to the lyrics with lines like the bombs came down and destroyed my home. I did not know how free we were until you left in a ball of sulfur, and it's definitely one of the highlights of this album because it once again really ties the whole album together and it really does show the album's ability to have kind of a loose, jammy feel to it. So it, not only does the waltz structure really work with this song, but also it's got kind of these drunken backing vocals which work really well on the track, and it's a perfect, and it goes perfectly aside the album's 6-minute centerpiece, She, which is mostly an instrumental with just one line of "She says I was a bad boy." And somehow that sort of line is symbolized really nicely through the different improvisations going on this track. They basically, Ty and his band basically just let the music do the talking. Getting here on this track with some totally on-point guitar solos, guitar and Rhodes solos, and then there's all kinds of weird things happening, like the drums going into different tempos. There's also some synth, as well as the use of synthesizers, adding these odd sort of spacey effects to the track. It's definitely a track that's basically about throwing everything in the pot and not being afraid to make something that's anything but and not being afraid to make something that's anything but predictable. Like, this is a song that I bet is probably just a total jam live, because they can totally extend this song to 11 minutes and make it sound incredible. incredible. And then of course we get kind of an Abbey Road inspired sort of later section in the album. We get the 1 minute interlude, Prison, which transitions nicely into Talkin' 3, which is basically the third version of the song Talking off of his self-titled record. But instead of the alternative country thing, he goes for something much more furious and in your face with some killer sax playing from McCall Cronin. McCall Cronin, and also McCall Cronin's sax is highlighted very nicely on the track, The New Pretender, but in this case it sort of has a little more of a disco Bowie inspired feel to it. So it's definitely got a nice kind of sexiness to it that really does fit in with with the rest of the instrumentation, including that awesome psychedelic distorted bass. And Ty doing some really nice drumming over that. Basically playing all the instruments himself except for the sax, which of course is Michael's part. The song I'm Free is yet another cover. In this case, the song is written by Kyle Thomas, aka King Tuff, who's guested with Ty before and has done projects with him in the past as well. And this is a song that yet again definitely does a good job of sort of displaying sort of the reward of freedom as something that'll help you find a new chapter in your life. And I love the layered vocal harmonies on the track, which are kind of Beatlesy almost. And it's got kind of this simple folky thing going on, but then it's got the very unusual touch of a synth bass solo, which manages to work really well on there. And then we have, and then the second to last track, 5 Foot Tall, is definitely one of my favorites on here. I love how this song, actually, the tempo of the song actually kind of reminds me a little bit of a Broadway musical a little bit, but it does it without sounding overly cheesy or anything like that. It actually really works. I mean, Ty, throughout this album, has the ability to take sounds you think would probably go off as a bit corny, but really making them work over a cohesive album. And I really like his smart lyrics of this girl being 5 foot tall and saying how he doesn't need her picture hanging on his wall because if he did, he's pretty sure it would fall. And I really like how this is one of 2 tracks here besides Alta that closes out with this really interesting sort of guitar drone section, which is sort of like a little mistake that didn't mean to be there, but somehow it manages to make one lovely transition into the album's closer and Goodnight, which is the longest track on here. It's over 12 minutes long. Definitely one of Ty's longest compositions, alongside the incredible Warm Hands, the incredible 10-minute epic off of his self-titled record, Warm Hands. And I think the lyrics may actually come from a track off of Sleeper a little bit, even though I haven't really heard that album, but still, nonetheless, this is such an incredible track that throughout its 12-minute runtime manages to stay engaging, even with very few lyrics. I mean, we really do see plenty of chemistry between Ty's guitar playing along with the playing of his second guitarist, Emmett Kelly. Emmett Kelly, like it really does show a lot of chemistry between the two guitarists, along with bassist McCall Cronin, drummer Charles Moothart, and keyboardist Ben Boy, who plays some really cool Wurlitzer piano on the track. And I see horns credited in the liner notes, but the horns aren't incredibly audible. Maybe they're put through a bunch of fuzz effects or something like that, because this song definitely has plenty of scuds going on the guitar. So maybe part of it that I'm hearing could be the horns put through some effects and heavy distortion or something like that. So anyway, I mean, the instrumentals, improvisations here on this track really do stay engaging. I mean, even in its quieter last couple of minutes, there's still plenty of cool things going on here, and it's not just being 12 minutes for the sake of it and not trying to devolve into repetition, but really managing to be creative and complex with what they're doing, the musicians, that is. So yeah, I definitely love this new Ty Segall record. I think Ty continues to keep progressing as an artist, which is especially apparent in his latest output, because I have to admit, I'm not crazy about his older, not really that crazy about his older stuff. It's a little too lo-fi for me, but his later stuff, however, I think has been improving in terms of production and songwriting and pretty much all fronts, to the point where Ty is definitely one of the better independent rockers working in this generation. So I'm going to make a bold statement here. I'm feeling 9 out of 10 for this new Ty Segall record, Freedom's Goblin. I mean, this is this incredible record. It definitely is kind of a long-winded one, so you kind of have to be patient with it, but believe me, it's worth it if you're able to take the time to listen to the whole thing, because it's definitely, in my opinion, the best garage rock album of the year so far. So anyway, that's my review of the new Ty Segall record, Freedom's Goblin, and I'll see you for episode 201.